Pecha Kucha 318, stolen with villain. So what do I mean? This was really a week where there's a lot of little details I needed to put down with my story to actually just straight up get to the storyboarding, but I've just kind of done the least I can to have something to show. So at least it's a good thing I have the Pecha Kucha because it got me doing something. And I'm still going through my Punisher Max collection, the Garth Ennis run. I love this stuff. So this version is basically a spy thriller Cold War espionage thing where the Punisher goes to Russia on a secret clandestine operation given to him by none other than Nick Fury. And you can tell how old this book is because it's the white version. He's a chain-smoking, no-nonsense, badass motherfucker from the Cold War days. The only, he'll give it to you straight, So basically, he gives it to the Punisher straight. He has to sneak into Russia to steal a virus that literally deletes people and turns them into skeletons. The American government wants to get their hands on this. There's only one sample of it, but it's had to be injected into the daughter of the scientist who's created it, along with the antidote. The Punisher therefore has to sneak into a missile base to kidnap the 6-year-old girl so that she can have her blood transfused so that this weapon of mass destruction doesn't end up in the wrong hands. The villain, who is not actually ever present with Frank Castle in this, is a Russian former commander of Afghanistan called the Man of Stone, who is basically the kingpin, but he's Russian. He's a straight up criminal. But basically the interaction between him and the Punisher stops World War III from happening. There's a very telling part in this book where Nick Fury literally whips one of the American generals who set this whole thing in motion because he tried to create a fake 9/11 terrorist cell. It's a good book, and it would be an excellent movie, and it would be an excellent standalone movie. Speaking of excellent standalone movies, although we're not, I had the pleasure of watching the 1950s Hammer horror Christopher Lee Dracula. It was better than I thought it would have been. Christopher Lee's a savage, but the movie, like most Hammer horror movies, there's not really a lot going on. I also watched American Psycho again. Unfortunately, my copy of the movie, the chainsaw scene, it just won't work on the DVD. It's damaged. I'd like to see Paul Allen's version of the DVD. And having watched Christian Bale be a lunatic, I thought I'd watch him being a lunatic in another version of a movie I have. So Batman Begins is always much better than I remember it being, simply because we all remember Heath Ledger's performance in the sequel. And having watched both Batman Begins and American Psycho on the same day, I then saw on TV The Road with Viggo Mortensen in it, a dystopian movie about a man just trying to protect his son in what appears to be a nuclear winter while everybody's just waiting to die. Excellent movie. I can't rate it highly enough. Speaking of a movie I can't rate highly enough, but that you will have heard of, Inception. Because I was watching the occasional Nolan movie, I thought I'd watch my copy of this as well. I enjoyed it in the cinema. I still enjoy it. I'm not going to worry about any plot holes or anything like that, because why would I? I'm not here for that. The third episode of Sherlock, I almost didn't watch. It seemed like it was becoming formulaic, and then they decided to completely blow it up. Sherlock solves like 5 mysteries in one episode and then meets Moriarty, and I'm like, bloody hell, how many episodes is the first season? I'll be watching the rest. Unless the 4th episode is as unwieldy as the second. I thought with my bison this week I would take a previous one and try and, make it better. So I kind of thought, can I take one that was meant to just be a black and white image, and just work directly on top of it and strengthen it up. And what I found is that I just wanted to change the composition, so I ended up redrawing it and more or less using the first image as loose reference. Delicate line work is something I really like, but it's not something I ever want to get stuck in. But in terms of the composition, especially the way Bison fills the page, while it's not clean in its application, I feel like there is something I can hang my hat on. I feel like this was a good week's work. Unlike the villain stuff I was doing. So really the problem for me has been I've got this really strong core idea, but it's all the details, man. It's about a supergroup that collapses because of a confrontation that escalates between two key members, but the problem is they're supposed to be a background group, and I can't be fucking asked to come up with a bunch of stereotypes that are stereotypical enough to be recognizable, but not so stereotypical enough to be straight up plagiarism. The third most important character in the book is kind of the woman that's trapped in the middle of the argument between the two men, who she may or may not be romantically involved with. As well as that, I'm actually trying to figure out the power dynamics. I don't mean politically, I mean like what are their actual powers of these people, and like there's going to be a straight up Iron Man ripoff, and I've got to figure out how he's an Iron Man ripoff without being literally an Iron Man ripoff, while he should be clearly noticeable as an Iron Man ripoff. This is why I'm just going around in circles and not really committing to stuff, because it's like part of the story is that it's a postmodern take on superheroes. It will be small, it should be quite obvious what's going on at a glance. But that requires an awful lot of heavy-handedness and subtlety. I want people to be able to notice things that they can take as signs that, oh, this guy's like Wolverine. You know, he's a chain-smoking savage like Nick Fury. You know, he's talking like Captain America about you know sometimes you just got to stick your park your ass on a line and stand up and say, that's not what I believe in, mister, or whatever, you know. And while it's going to be a whole lot less time consuming than my previous book, it's so much shorter, it's going to be infinitely easier to fuck it up. And I already gave up on the first book because I started to feel like I'd fucked that up. I do not want this to be Midnighter. I do not want this to be a decently drawn book that just doesn't have a point. I know what my point is, and I just don't want to lose it in translation. It's quite likely to happen, especially if I faff around with the details as I depict them. So we'll have to see what my pace is with this going forward. But that's the end of Pecha Kucha 318, and I'll see you next time.